Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in this world. And we're here for another edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Denison. Ned?
Hello, everybody. I normally describe myself as an epic marathoner, but I won't do that today because our next guest makes my career look a bit shabby. I'm also the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. Our guest is Dr. Vicki Keith, Order of Canada, which is a big deal. She's got at least a 20-year marathon career, and I'm going to laser focus her, first of all, on some of her early work, which is the 1985 and 1986 swims in a swimming pool of 100 plus hours each, as you would. So, Vicki, tell us why, how you did it, why you didn't sleep, and a few things about it. I'm going to sneak up on your open water career slowly now.
Well, I actually discovered those records in the Guinness Book, and I first of all saw Myrtle Huddleston's 87 hours and 27 minutes, and I thought, there's no way she set that time as her goal. I need a goal time to aim for. So I saw hers and I thought, well, 87 hours, the next round number is 100. So I went and I swam 100 hours and I thought, I got out at the end and I celebrated, I could go longer. So I focused in on Zimmy's record of, I forget how far it was. And so I set mine for the round number of 200 hours, but at 129 hours and 45 minutes. And the 45 minutes is important because I was so tired at that point. I actually put my head back on a lane rope and I went to sleep. And the people on the deck were calling my name and I didn't hear any of it. Somebody jumped in the water and they put their hand on my shoulder and I woke up instantly and realized it was over. I didn't understand what was over. I just realized it was over. And they got me out of the pool and they took me off to the hospital, have me checked over, and I was fine. And my parents took me back to their place, and I went to bed. And my dad came in to check on me a couple of hours later. I was lying in bed, sound asleep, kicking my feet, and I couldn't understand that swim was over. I couldn't understand it. And I woke up the next morning, and I felt like I'd failed. And I lay in bed for a couple of hours, just trying to figure out how do I go out and face my family, face my friends, and admit to them that I'd failed. And finally, I realized that I had done my absolute very best. I now knew how long I could stay awake for, 129 hours and 45 minutes. And these were the things, doing your very best is one of the best things you can, but this is what led me into my marathon swimming career, because I knew some of my outlines of what I was able to do. I understood hallucinations way better, so I was able to know when I would start hallucinating, when I might be able to determine between reality and fantasy, and how to control some of them so that I wasn't putting myself in a dangerous situation, like diving down to the bottom of Lake Ontario to check out something cool.
And so tell us how it physically worked. Did you get a personal comfort break every 2 hours for 3 minutes, or how did it physically work? Did you stop and feed? And
I was following the Guinness Book of World Records, which I think you have to be moving 95% of the time. So I chose 97.5% of the time because I didn't want any question at any point if I hadn't followed the rules. I ate in the pool, treading water and continuing to move back and forth. I did get out of the water to go to the bathroom sometimes. And I wanted to be sure, and this is with every record, I want to be sure when I finally get out of the water that there's absolutely no question that I followed the rules and I did everything I could to do it to the exact right specifications.
Just one thing for any viewer, you quickly mentioned Vinny. You and I have been talking about him for a couple of days. Anybody wants to look him up, it's Charles Zibelman. He was called Legless Vimy. He is an honoree with double amputee. So another inspirational character. So you followed up your long pool swims with that heartbreaker for a lot of people, Lake Ontario, right on your doorstep. Tell us about growing up in Lake Ontario and the stories and the things you witnessed as a young girl about that famous bit of water.
Well, my closest lake when I was first born was Lake Winnipeg. I was born in Winnipeg, and we had a cottage at Victoria Beach. So that was my first body of water. I didn't really get introduced to Lake Ontario till I was about a teenager. And water had always called to me, but I heard that people swam across it. It never crossed my mind until my open water swims, or until my pool swims. But the one thing I'd heard when I heard about swimming across Lake Ontario was that it was impossible to do a double crossing of Lake Ontario. And that hit me because I really struggle with the word impossible. I don't believe anything is impossible. I think there's always a way. So when I heard it was impossible to do a double crossing, that became my focus. I never ever considered swimming a single crossing of Lake Ontario. So when I headed out, the first attempt at the double crossing, I got all the way across, and I think 5 miles back when a huge storm blew up and pulled me out of the water. It was a horrendous storm. The winds were howling. It wasn't safe for any of us to be in the water. And that's one of the things about Ontario, but Lake Ontario, is you have to be respectful. In any body of water, you have to trust the experts around you and be respectful of that body of water, because it can turn something nasty pretty quick.
And this is 64 miles?
Yeah, 104 kilometers. It's 52 kilometers each way.
Okay.
So 32 miles. Yes, I had to do the math.
And you went back and completed it after that initial try?
That's right. Yeah, I got out of the water for that one and trained for a year and got back in the water. And I learned enough from it because I had been told that starting in the evening made the most sense, because you got flat water to start. And what I discovered was for the double crossing, that made no sense at all. And for some people, it makes no sense. If you're an early morning person and your swim's going to take 24 hours, you're going to get that flat water at some point anyway. So the thing I learned that was most valuable is I was in sleep deprivation the first afternoon because I had started in the evening. And I knew for the second attempt that I wanted to start first thing in the morning. So my sleep deprivation didn't hit till the second afternoon.
Okay. And when you started to see walruses at 3 a.m, you had already been experienced with hallucinations in the pool.
That's right. I was very able to determine between reality and fantasy, and actually found that I can go about 80 to 90 hours with being able to determine between reality and fantasy. And so that became sort of my line, is I didn't want to go beyond that because I needed to be able to keep myself safe and to keep my crew safe, to be able to do that.
And the thing I always tell people for people viewing is tonight when you get ready to go to bed, right? Just think back on your day. You know, you maybe got up at 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. You did whatever. You came home, you had your dinner, you watched television, you're a bit tired, you went to bed. That's, 16 hours or whatever it is in change. And Vicki's been talking about 129 hours. She's talking about 24 plus hours. So keep that in mind. When you and I first got on the call, we had a humorous exchange where you were talking about the image you were seeing, and when you raised your right arm, you saw it as your left arm, which brought me to your next topic. At some point along the way, you stopped doing freestyle for a little while, and you decided that so you didn't get your arms confused, you would do butterfly, where the symmetry is all important. We've all probably done a little bit of butterfly. I happen to be a fantastic butterflyer, going one way in a short pool. You took butterfly out in the open water. First of all, why? Did somebody say impossible is my guess?
Yes.
And how did you train for that?
Well, I was told it was impossible to do the English Channel butterfly. So I decided that I'd choose the major marathon challenges of the world as the world saw them at that moment and do them all butterfly. So I chose the English Channel, Catalina Channel, Juan de Fuca because the water temperature, Lake Winnipeg because I was born close to Lake Ontario, and the Cook Strait and Sydney Harbour in Australia. Sorry. So it was people said it was impossible, so I decided that I was going to do it. How did I train for it? A year before I was to get in the water for the first swim, I did not swim a single stroke of anything but butterfly from that point forward. My biggest fear was that in the middle of a swim in a little bit of confusion, I would take one stroke of something other than butterfly, and that would be it. And I took that very, very seriously, to the extent when I was feeding, I would always tread water in the opposite direction of forward motion, because I wanted people to know that every stroke I took was butterfly. And if I was moving forward and one stroke felt to me like it would be a lie, and it was really important to me that every stroke be butterfly. And no, there's no such thing as single arm butterfly, because somebody's wondering.
So one of my colleagues completed a butterfly channel, and his butterfly stroke was a kind of a very exaggerated up and a long glide underwater. What was your butterfly stroke like?
I call it survival fly. So it's really important that your arms break the surface every single stroke. I would get a full extension at the top, get an undulation of a kick, get as powerful a stroke as I could, and bring it back to the top. You can't pause at the bottom because you get stuck, but it's got to be a really good, strong, powerful stroke. My freestyle and my butterfly distance, neither is fast, but they are the same speed. I can go just as fast butterfly because of the power of the stroke. And then not focusing on the kick, but allowing a nice powerful undulation so you let the currents go so you can move forward again. And I think it's more important, the kick is for to let the currents go as opposed to create forward motion.
So when you started your conversation with the Channel Swimming Association, I assume it was long before the internet. Were you writing them letters? Were you sending them a telex? Were you telephoning them? How long did it take before they believed that you were half serious about this butterfly stuff?
It actually didn't take them long to believe it, that I was attempting it. They didn't believe it was possible. When you read the logbook, the first sentence is, we figured that we'll be back by noon. Like, there's no chance this is going to happen. And at noon, they wrote, we're going to go on shift work because of her past reputation. So all of a sudden, they were starting to believe. And this is one of the things that I take great joy in my swimming, but mostly in my coaching, is creating a situation where people all of a sudden start believing in the impossible. And I think with my para coaching, that's something that I really take great joy in, is somebody thinking there's no way that can happen and turning it within 12 hours, 15 hours, 24 hours to believing that nothing's impossible. And that transformation is something that's really special to me.
So one of your observers was the Hall of Fame honoree Ray Scott. Did he have any particularly interesting or insightful things to say afterwards?
I don't remember much of afterwards. I was tying socks around my legs to cut the circulation off so the jellyfish stings weren't as irritating. I don't remember much other than just we got on the boat and we headed back to England, and that was it. There's not a lot that stuck in my brain afterwards other than the jellyfish stings. And I remember we were staying at a bed and breakfast, and the sting would wake me up, and I would go in and I'd pour boiling hot water from the shower down my leg until I couldn't feel it, and then go back to sleep till the stings woke me up again. So that's what I remember, is more than anything else.
On the scale of impossible swims, it's in Canadian folklore, and the rest of the world is starting to figure it out. Juan de Fuca as an impossible swim, as an impossible place to go across in a boat. It's just an impossible place. I presume that word impossible figures in again. When did that come into your sights?
When I was investigating, and again without internet, what were considered the swims. So I think probably the Juan de Fuca came in because Marilyn Bell, and she became the first person that I was aware of in open water swimming. And I actually learned about her the night before my very first open water swim, because there was no research, there was nothing. And somebody said, oh, well, there's this woman, Marilyn Bell, and she greased up. And I go, oh, okay, so that's what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I knew nothing about marathon swimming. My first swim was 12 miles butterfly. And I knew that you had to grease up. but I didn't know if you were allowed to eat. So I put Vaseline on my body because that's what you're supposed to do. And after 8 hours of swimming, I realized I needed something to eat. So I treaded water, and they gave me 2 barley sugars and a can of apple juice. And I downed that and finished off the 12 miles butterfly.
You received a great honor from the country, the Order of Canada.
Yes.
For some of our viewers, it's equivalent to the MBE that the British Queen would give. Describe the experience.
I don't even know how to, because I didn't feel worthy. I didn't understand how the highest honor in Canada could be presented to somebody who swam. And I know it was more than that. It was the dreams that other people started developing, but also the fundraising that I had done, because my swims were all to raise money for programs for kids with physical impairments. And at that point, I had raised about $800,000 for programs for kids with physical impairments. So I know that was all part of it, but I don't think you ever see yourself as deserving something like that. So going there and seeing the pomp and just having that whole experience and the dressing up and some of the celebrities that were there, it was unbelievable.
Did you wear a hat?
I did not. No, but I
you're holding out for the knighthood or something before you wear the hat.
Of course. I wasn't a hat person at that point. I almost felt like that it was almost a disrespect is covering your eyes. And I think that the eyes are the windows to the soul. And I think it's important that people get to know you. So that wasn't something that even entered as a possibility. But it was awesome. And it was great to share it with family, because they're always behind you, but they don't get the same recognition. I mean, nobody swims a body of water by themselves. They have so many people supporting them around them. The people that made the donations, the people on the boats, the media telling the story. There's so many people supporting you. And we always talk about when one person swam, but one person never swims. It's always a circle of support. And so just to be able to share it with a few family members, and specifically my parents, my husband, was pretty spectacular.
And you look like you took a little time off from the big, nasty, ugly marathons, like 10 plus years, and then came back and did some freestyle ones. Any logic in all of this, or just coincidence?
Was that the why not try you're talking about?
I don't know. You came back in 2001.
We wanted to do 2 of my swimmers. One was a para swimmer. She has cerebral palsy, walked with forearm crutches, and her able-bodied sister had never been able to do something together, sport-wise, and they really wanted to. And I thought the one thing they can do together is cycle, because a hand cycle and a bicycle go about the same speed. They were both swimmers, but swimming, the able-bodied swimmer was much faster. So we came up with an idea of why not try. And I swam I don't remember the distance. I swam a distance, passed the baton to the athletes of today, Jenna and Natalie Lambert. They hand cycled and cycled from Port Hope to Brockville, and they handed off the baton to the athletes of tomorrow, and they ran, walked, and wheeled to Ottawa. So it was just a great big long event, and more an event than an open water swim. But then I came back and did the 80-kilometer butterfly because we needed some funds, and that was coming back and serious training for
a month, a year, 2 years. How much training?
I trained for a year, and again I went with my pattern of I didn't swim a stroke of anything but butterfly for that entire year. And people worry about my shoulders, but I've learned some of the things. The most important thing, and the thing that I share with my athletes, is technique is first. And we think that maybe it doesn't matter how our shoulders move or how we do a recovery, but it matters immensely. And if you can do something technically correct, you're going to protect your shoulders. So for me, it was rhomboids, making sure my shoulder blades were tight together, because then you don't have any impingement, you're opening, and then finding a pattern where your elbows are high for the power, so you're not, again, impinging. So it was technically correct. And I think one of my advantages, which is kind of weird, is I didn't have a coach. And so on the days where my shoulders just didn't feel like they should be doing it, or mentally I wasn't there, I could adjust my training for that day without saying out loud, I need to change something today. And then, of course, I had to have a training plan that allowed for that, but didn't let me wimp out. Because I'm a procrastinator at heart. So I've got to find ways to keep myself going.
So you didn't write the daily workout on a whiteboard and religiously follow it, but every week or every month you met your targets.
Well, every week I had a goal, and if I didn't swim it in 5 days, then I did 6 days, and if I didn't do it in 6, I did it in 7. But there was no way that I was going to not do the 7 unless I was sick. And we all have to remember, when we're sick, we take care of ourselves first. And if you're sick, then you start again when you're fresh again.
I remember watching your TED Talk some years ago, and this vision of this amputee girl stomping down the pool deck is forever stayed with me. Talk to us about the most unbelievable performances, physical, emotional, that you've seen from your amputee students.
So I coach a team of athletes with physical impairments and their able-bodied siblings. So I've seen a wide range. The athlete you're speaking about is Ashley Cowan, and she was a quadruple amputee. When she was 15 years old, she swam across Lake Erie, and nobody believed it was possible. When we started the swim, I begged a freelance media person to come and catch the start because nobody believed it was possible. We didn't have anybody at the start other than the crew. And halfway through the swim, people started realizing something special was happening. And all of a sudden, the media were there. The helicopters were over top catching the story. And about a mile from shore, she looked at me. She goes, "I can't do this. I'm exhausted." And
helicopters.
And I'm going, "You can do this. You can do this. I'm tired. I don't want to." And we were going back and forth, back and forth. And finally, I looked at her and realized, because I'm trying to figure out as a coach, what is my role? You know, if she's telling me she's tired, what do I tell her? What do I say? Do I pull her out? And what I realized was my kayak was about this close to her at all times. And never once did she reach out to touch the kayak. And we had the conversation that if she needed to get out, all she had to do was touch the kayak. And she never came close to the kayak. What she was telling me is she was exhausted. And if I gave her the out, she would take it and then blame me for the rest of her life. So we just encouraged and cajoled and supported. And she thought we were lying about how close she was. And all of a sudden she heard the voices calling out to her. And she put her eyes got big. She put her face in the water and she sprinted to shore. So that was an incredible experience. I coached Carlos Costa, a double leg amputee who swam across Lake Ontario, so the full 32 miles, 52 kilometers. I've coached a number of athletes with cerebral palsy and open water swimming, Terry Lynn Langdon, Jenna Lambert. I've coached some able-bodied, including my husband, across Lake Ontario. And I coach competitive swimming as well. And I've had 4 athletes compete at the international level. And one athlete is a Paralympian and is planning on Tokyo 2021 for her experience. And she's a breaststroker. So I don't just teach butterfly and freestyle, for those wondering.
I'm of the belief that the crew always lies about how far you've got to go.
I won't allow lying. I won't allow lying. I have one person who's allowed to give me information, and it's one person that I trust to always give me the truth. And nobody else is allowed to share anything with me. And often I will not allow any information to be shared with me until I'm past the halfway mark. So I have no idea. So the Catalina channel, they wait for me to tell them when I want to know. And I didn't tell them, and I didn't tell them when it was foggy. And I thought, this is going to take forever because I couldn't see the other side. Well, the fog lifted and I could see people standing on the beach. What an incredible experience, from thinking I wasn't even halfway to, oh, it's right there.
Just so people realize there's different ways to approach it, I actually give my crew a written letter that says, "Please lie to me."
Wow.
Please tell me I look great. Please tell me it's one more feed. Please tell me I'm going to break the record. Please tell me I'm ahead of everybody else. Please tell me there's television cameras. Whatever they need to do, whatever lies they need to tell me. And when I'm done, I never ask. I never have any idea how many lies they've told me, but there's always a good number of lies. But every person has a different mindset.
Yes.
And I think particularly for the swimmer and the crew, I think you'll probably agree with this, there should be one person in charge of the crew.
Yes.
I don't mind 4 people clapping as I drop a water bottle yelling go. I don't mind that. But
Yeah.
I don't want to come in and have 4 people telling me something different.
No,
Pick up the
it
pace,
does.
go slower. So that communication between the crew chief and the swimmer is critical. Sometimes you say nice things. Sometimes you say not so nice things. Mike Oram was on yesterday. Mike, the only stories that Mike told us was when he said not so nice things to the swimmer. But he picked his times right, and he picked the swimmer right, and in all of those cases, that motivation worked.
Yeah. As a coach of open water swimmers, it's a fine line. One of my swimmers, Carlos, asked me, am I at least halfway? The weather was horrendous. And I couldn't lie to him because I promised him I never would lie to him. And so I answered, yes. And he understood from that yes, he was, but just barely. But he needed to hear yes at that moment or he would have stopped. And so it's that fine line of knowing your swimmer and knowing what they need to hear and being able to tell the truth in a way that might not sound like the truth to them.
Okay.
They need to hear the positive no matter what. You just have to figure out a way to say it.
And the satisfaction you get from coaching a disabled swimmer across a big swim, describe it.
Well, it comes back to my love of changing people's perception of what is possible. I don't love coaching able-bodied over para or para over able-bodied. I love any opportunity to prove to them that nothing is impossible. But the joy of showing that nothing is impossible is really important and one of my greatest joys in life.
Thank you very much, Vicki. And for anybody who likes these things, there's a Vicki Keith TED Talk, which is just you've got to see it. There's some imagery she paints that will stay with you for life. Vicki, thank you very much.
Thank you.